All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're diving into a single factor that might be shaping your entire future more than anything else you can think of. But before we do, just pause for a moment. If you believe your life deserves a bigger story than the street you were born on, then go ahead and hit like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment, because what we're talking about today might just be the blueprint that changes everything. Okay, so what if I told you that the single biggest factor deciding your income, your opportunities, maybe even your whole future, isn't your talent or how hard you work or even your biggest dreams?
Nope, it's not your raw talent.
It's not about how hard you grind either. And believe it or not, it's not even about the size of your dreams. It's simply your location. Yeah, that one little spot on the map where you happen to be right now. I know, that sounds incredibly harsh, right? But here's the thing. The data, well, it doesn't really care about feelings. And the numbers point to something very real we're calling the geographic trap. So, take a look at this. This chart lays out a pretty stark reality, and it's backed by some serious research from the World Bank and the UN. It basically says if you're born in a place with low economic activity, you have a staggering 70% chance of staying right there, stuck in that same economic bracket for life. Just let that sink in. 70%. But, okay, here's the flip side, and this is where it gets really powerful. By simply moving to a region that needs labor, you are suddenly 3 to 10 times more likely to multiply your income. And this isn't some small trend. We're talking about migrant workers around the globe sending home over $860 billion every year. That's more than the entire GDP of many developed countries. And that really brings us to the core idea here, summed up perfectly by this quote. The world itself is full of opportunity. It's our specific, single location that can be limited. All right, so let's zoom out for a minute. Let's look at the big picture of this unequal world we live in. You know, where the money actually is versus where most of the people are. The way global wealth is distributed right now is, well, it's insane. I mean, look at this chart. That tiny sliver at the top 0.01%, they control more wealth than the poorest 4 billion people combined. It's almost impossible to even wrap your head around that kind of gap. The total pie is massive, right? We're talking somewhere around $450 to $500 trillion. And yet the average adult in the world has less than $8,000 in assets. And you've got over 3 billion people, that's nearly half the planet, living on less than $6 a day. The opportunities are just not where most of the people are. So all of this leads to a really important question, right? If the opportunity is out there, in all these countries with labor shortages and way higher wages, and the need is so obviously here, with billions of people struggling, why do so many people just stay stuck? Well, to really get that, let's talk about a guy we'll call Adam. Now, Adam is a fictional name, of course, but his story is incredibly real. It's the journey of millions who figured out the escape plan. So Adam grew up in one of those dying towns where the main factory had shut down years ago. He was working at a small store for $600 a month, just enough to survive, but never enough to really breathe. And the data shows people in his situation almost never break out of that cycle. But Adam did something different. He found a security job abroad that paid $1,800 a month, 3 times his salary instantly. He went from feeling totally stuck to feeling like he actually had a real opportunity. So, what was the actual, tangible payoff for making that move? Let's break down how Adam turned a simple change of address into real hard capital. Okay, so because his new salary was so much higher, Adam could suddenly save about $1,000 every single month. Get this, within just 3 years, he'd saved $50,000. 5 years in, he had over $80,000. I mean, this is money he couldn't have even dreamed of saving if he'd stayed put. And what Adam did, that's a perfect example of what experts call global mobility. It's really just a term for moving to a new spot on the map to get a better economic opportunity. It's not about luck, it's a strategy. And honestly, this is the single most important part of his story. Adam didn't get lucky. He got mobile. The very day he stepped across a border, his income tripled. The day he changed his location, he literally changed his entire financial destiny. Okay, so how do you apply this to your own life? It all starts with creating your own opportunity map. And that means learning to see the world in a completely different way. This is the new mindset you need to adopt. First, borders aren't walls, they're gateways. Second, passports aren't just labels, they are powerful tools for access. And third, and this is the big one, your location is not your destiny. It's just a set of coordinates that you have the power to change. So where do you even look on this new map? Well, the opportunity is in countries that have way more jobs than they have workers. Places like the US, Canada, and parts of Western Europe. It's in places with collapsing birth rates like Japan and South Korea that are desperate for young labor. And it's in nations that are actively willing to train, sponsor, and hire foreigners because, frankly, they need them to keep their economies running. You see, the people who really win in today's world, they're not always the smartest. They're not always the ones who work the hardest. They're the ones who understand geography. They get that if your city doesn't need you, another one does. If your hometown doesn't offer you opportunity, your world still does. So the only real question left to ask is, where are you going to look?